Now, I realize that was a very light message, so there are probably no comments or questions. Didn't step on any toes or anything. All right, if you have a comment or question, this is what we call the Afterburn. Even the elders coming up to make a comment or question. All right. So if you have a comment or question, you can line up here. If you're online, we've got our Shamish team in the back. Looks like Shamish Gary's back. Hi, that's good, okay. So we got everybody back now. All right, so just go ahead and start typing in your comments and questions. Okay, we'll begin with Elder Billy Jackson.
They said my pass had been revoked and I couldn't get up here because we work together, so that's exactly why I got up here. Amen. Anyway, it was a great teaching, Rabbi, and I don't normally get up here because I'm always up there, so I wanted to say that in this teaching, it reminded me of a phone call I got yesterday from Brian Bain. And Brian did something to me, for me, that I do for you. And you recognize it. I don't think people recognize it, so I wanted to give them an idea. Tell them, because Brian did it to me and I recognized it yesterday. When he called me, he said, I just want to share something to you. And he always is very respectful and had the awe and reverence of the position and the trust and the love to call, knowing that whatever he shares with me, I'm going to share with you. So that reminded me when you were talking about the vertical structure and you mentioned the work thing, it reminded me of I think it was last week when we were in the office, and most people don't know, Marlene knows, Rabbi Tom knows, but I don't joke around with Rabbi. Rabbi can joke all he wants with me. And he said something about, he thought I was his friend, and I said, I'm friendly. The friendship, you can be my friend, towards me, but I will never be disrespectful. I will never joke around. I will never tease. I will never do it towards him. Now, he does it all day with me, and I'm good with that. I'm fine. But because of my respect for him as my rabbi, my teacher, my covering, I don't do that to him. And I'm consider myself to be very close with him. And we have that trust, and I have that trust in him as I follow Abba, following Rabbi, following Abba through Rabbi. And I think many of you need to understand that perspective, because I'm very close to him. I don't disrespect him. I don't tease, joke around with him personally towards him. And I'm not saying he does that towards me, but I want you guys to see that, because I didn't recognize it until Brian did that with the phone call with me yesterday. And I know Rabbi Tom at times get a little irritated when people say Steve, or they just addressed him in an improper way. And I never thought about it. I mean, I don't get as irritated because I realize that person doesn't know, or they're not in that respectful place within themselves to respect him as I respect him. But I'm starting to see it now and understand it when Brian called me, and I see it towards me as I give it towards Rabbi in honor of serving Abba through Rabbi Steve, when people just say, hey, Billy. And now my ears starting to perk up, because I'm like, where's the awe and reverence and respect of the position, as Rabbi says? And I really want you guys to understand, when we talk about the vertical structure, it's not to smack you down. It's to show you, as Rabbi said, that he's the greatest servant, and I'm trying to be like him as he follows Abba. And I think we need to recognize that in our journey to get from where we are to where he is, to where Abba is, that he's given us an anointed appointed. And we're not just co-workers. I believe and trust him, as I did before I ever had a job, to be the anointed appointed that Abba put in m.t.o.i. for us. And I never take that for granted. I never take it lightly. I do not shoot him with the Nerf gun, teaser Marley. I have one.
She doesn't shoot me either. She tries.
Because I love him, I honor, I respect him, the reverence and the respect that's due to not just the position. Yes, that's important in the vertical structure. But he is our covering. He is our anointed and appointed that Abba gave us as an example to follow. Is he perfect? No. Am I ever going to point that out? No. If he asks me, I'm honest, and he knows that. But it's not my job. It's our job to support him, to lift him up, to carry Max, to take the bag off his shoulder, as somebody said earlier. It's our job to uplift him, uplift his wife, uplift his family. And as you guys do for me, as I mentioned Brian, you guys do that for us. And people tell me all the time. I got a lady, DB, if she's out there, I'm sure she's watching, that sends me a prayer every week. And almost every day she sends me a text message, and I don't get to read it every week, but she says she's praying for me, praying for my family, praying for Rabbi, praying for the Mishpachah. And I'm so very thankful. But I don't often get up here and say things about Rabbi, but he knows. And I want you guys to know that this man is truly an anointed and appointed man from Yahweh. Amen. Amen. Thank you.
You know, I really appreciate that, Elder Billy. So, look, and by the way, for those of you, because you mentioned something, I can give you the example. I don't ask or desire even anybody to carry a bag or open a door or do any of those things. However, when I show up and he's watching the cameras to know when I'm here and he meets me in the parking lot and he grabs my stuff, something he's never been asked to do, I feel the respect, I feel the support, etc., which is why he's doing it, to convey that, all right? He's not trying to convey, I don't think you can carry your bag. Okay? He wants me to know that he's like an armor bearer. He's there to make sure that I'm taken care of and provided for, make sure that the Rebbitzin is as well. But it's that conveys that relational love and appreciation. So it took me a little while to be okay with that, because I'm used to just doing my own thing. As a matter of fact, for years, people would always ask, what they could do to help, and I would say, you can go ask the elder or whoever, but don't ask me, I do my own things. And so, It's just so he knows. Now, the other thing I was going to say is you should be calling him elder. Okay? Now, I don't want you to get confused. It's just, it can be a little strange from the vertical point of view. When you hear me, I may call him Billy. I may call Rabbi Tom. But that's this way. You never do that the other way. Okay? Because after all, if I was under, I would never refer to that person with anything but their title. Okay? And so I don't think they ever feel disrespected when I use their first names, but that's because of our relationship and where we are in each other. Okay? So don't let that confuse you at all. It's just a little strange for me when I'm there covering to refer to them that way. It's just something I work on. So I do as much as I can remember to do. But just don't, because you hear me call him Billy, don't you call him Billy. Okay? If I don't call him Rabbi Tom, which in front of people I almost never would make that mistake. Okay? But realize that you need to give them the proper respect. And titles are a way to communicate that. Okay? All right, Mercy.
This was really interesting because it made me I had something a little twisted, and I'm not sure why I had it twisted. You made mention of something in Revelations where it says the bride makes herself ready for the groomsmen. And I know that that's in regard to Yeshua. And I know that there's also an amount of the bride making herself ready in terms of a marriage. So I think in my mind, I was under the assumption that a bride makes herself, well, forget what I thought. What I would like to know is the twofold of it. What does a bride do to make herself ready in terms of Messiah? And then what does a bride do to make herself ready in terms of marriage? Because you said something really interesting there, like, well, she can't just do what she wants to do to make herself ready in the physical, natural sense. And that kind of blew my mind for a minute. So if you would expound on both of those, I'd appreciate it.
All right. I can do that. So this is an encouragement to all of you that are single, okay? One of the most useful singles events I went to when I was in Worldwide Church of God many years ago. This is like 1990 or something. earlier than that probably. And the guy who was giving sort of a message to all of the singles there said, don't focus on getting married. Focus on becoming the best possible spouse, the best catch you can be, whether it's the husband or the wife role. And so that's basically what Mercy's asking. So I mean, but I can understand that, and I want to encourage all of you, if you're single, rather than focus on trying to find a good man or a good woman, focus on becoming the best man or woman you can be, so that when you do have one come your way, you're ready to do your part, and you're also in a place where you can have open eyes to see whether or not they're the right one. Okay, that's important too. So when it comes to the man role, maybe it's a little bit easier to understand some of the things that they need to be able to do. But that's just a sort of outside easy things like be a good provider, be able to provide safety and protection and provision. But what about the ability to care for, to cherish, and treat with the right respect the woman? And you can practice that, by the way, in other words, you have to understand, put yourself in the mindset of what they might feel like by getting under a covering and knowing what they're going to be, because you're going to now be supporting that covering. And also then think of it watching Yeshua and how he treats or how I would treat. So you learn those things. Now for the wife, you want to be able to, A, take care of yourself, because you can't take care of anybody. Same thing for the men. If you can't take care of you, how are you going to take care of anybody else? If you can't afford your own place, your own car, your own food, then how are you going to take care of anybody? Ladies, if you do get married, you might not stay married. Your husband may die. I don't want to scare anybody, but these things do happen. And there are some people that, end up in really bad places because they had never learned to take care of themselves at the same time that they learn to take care of anybody else. How are you going to have children if you are at an age where you can still have children? How are you going to have children and take care of them if you can't take care of yourself? So don't just look like I'm going to get married, my husband's going to take care of me and I don't have to do anything. No, you have to be able to take care of yourself. As a matter of fact, you're going to be expected to take care of the household while he's not there, if you are there taking care of the household, if there are children and other things. Because when I talked about, ladies, you're not just going to not work and just stay home. Well, you know what? If you have children, that's more than a full-time job. Especially if those children are young enough that they're home all day. But are you going to have what it takes emotionally and maturity-wise to provide and care for and discipline and instruct children if you can't take care of yourself? And can you do that in the context of, and this is where, as becoming a wife, or preparing to be, you practice with leadership, how can I learn to be trusting and submissive to the guidance from an authority above me? See, now you've already been doing that for years with me, so you come, you ask questions, and you do the things, etc. And so you've seen how that all works. So that's part of the preparation. So you have to get some opportunities to practice that, okay? Some of you can practice that at your jobs. If you're at a job and you have a supervisor, practice it with the supervisor. Trust them, believe. And even if they're awful, you're going to have to learn, maybe your husband will be not so great at times. So you have to learn how to handle that. These are things you practice. So think about the skill sets that you will need to have by the time you get married. All right? So some of you, and you would probably fall into this category, are very, very competent. And so being able to then submit yourself under somebody could be a little bit tougher. But then again, ladies, this is actually a good thing in some ways. If you are, how do I want to word this? The more competent you are, the higher standards you will have. Okay? Because if you can't barely take care of yourself at all, then any guy that could do anything will impress you to some degree. But if you can take care of yourself very nicely, then what you're looking for in a man will be someone who can do that and then some. So your standards will start to elevate what you're looking for. Does that make any sense? So ladies, get good at taking care of yourself and then be able to submit that under when you find the right man to do that. Look, I married at an older age. My wife was in her 30s, I was in my 30s. And so I married a woman that already had the ability to take care of herself. She didn't need a lot of, if we'd gotten married like at 20 and we just came right out of high school into college or something, then none of us would have known, either one of us would have really known what to do with help to take care of ourselves. But she was already taking care of herself. She already had a career. She was making a good living. She bought her own clothes and had her own car and did all her, she didn't need me for anything from that point of view. What she needed me for was the things she couldn't do herself. And she also wanted to be able to have the family and not have to do the working. But let me tell you something, all of you, all this is somewhat only what it is because she was already able to work. Because we didn't make any money at this in the beginning, so to speak. We didn't have an ability to live off of this in the beginning. And so the fact that she made a decent living that we could live off of while this wasn't doing anything is part of what made this possible. Otherwise, I don't know how I would have gotten it launched and started if that were not the case. And so Abba provided me with someone who actually already was able to take care of those things. But I can also tell you, men, that if the wife is making the money and you're not, that's almost always going to make it hard. That doesn't mean it can't work, but it's going to make it hard. It's going to be hard for her to submit truly when she's the moneymaker. It's going to be really hard for you to tell her what she can and can't do with the money when she's making it too. Matter of fact, guys, the better way to have this be is that you don't need their money at all and to say, all your money you make, do whatever you want with it. It's your money, do what you want. I'll take care of everything else. But see, a lot of you can't imagine how you're going to make it without two incomes. Go back a few generations, it was not two incomes. And all the guys are out there thinking about, how can I ever make enough? Well, aim higher. There is plenty of work out there that pays plenty. Matter of fact, I don't think there's ever existed a time where you could really make any amount of money you want. You just got to be willing to do the work and be creative. But it's all out there. I mean, there's just no restraint. And most of it doesn't require a degree or formal education, so it's not even like you have to go spend a bunch of money to do it. And so the only excuse is you're not willing to pay the price. So then for Mercy, the answer to all the ladies and to the guys too, while you're single, think about what you're going to need to be in place when you get married. What will be attractive to the potential spouse in terms of all aspects of what you are. In other words, personality, how you take care of yourself, how you're ready to integrate with somebody else. Because some of you are so used to doing things your own way that you're not really going to be able to merge with somebody. Because when you merge with somebody, that means that you're merging desires and preferences and all kinds of things so that neither one of you is going to get everything your way. Can't work that way. I tell people all the time in marriage counseling, or pre-marriage counseling, let's say, before they get married, the only way to win is that nobody wins. Wins means I win, you lose. See, winning, when there's a winner, there's a loser. There is no such thing as win-win. Okay? Win-win doesn't actually work. What there is lose-lose, but everybody gets enough so they're happy. Nobody actually gets to win. Doesn't get to have it all their way, doesn't get to make, everything be just the only way they see it and want it and everything else. Two have to walk in agreement, so you have to figure out a way to come to agreement. And you should do a lot of that before you get married. Did that answer your question? Sort of. I mean, it's hard to get into the specifics. You'll have to ask me more specifics for that. But really, it's about, and go get counsel. If you're struggling, trying to figure out what can you do to be more of a attractive potential mate. And some of that may be physical. Very little of it should be, though. It's mostly going to be maturity and emotional and getting your vertical act together and your life together. Okay? Nobody wants to marry a fixer-upper. Okay? You want a project? Get a house you can fix or a car you can fix. Don't get a person you need to fix. Okay, it's not what you want to do. All right, Marlene, with or without your Nerf gun? Okay, I'm kidding. Don't blow into a microphone. Everybody sees people do that. Don't do that. If you see, because then you're blowing actually moisture into the microphone. It's not good for the mic.
Oh, sorry.
That's why we say things like test or whatever. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so I really appreciate this teaching, and one thing that I got out of it was that the women have to trust the man that they're going to marry. And so so I have like a list, like a long list of what I want in a man from my husband. And I really hadn't thought about trust and me trusting him in various areas. And so then I decided to make a list about ways I wanted to trust him. So I thought that was good. And when I thought about different guys that I was attracted to, I realized that, but I don't trust him in this area, that area, so that actually disqualifies him. So I thought that was a good, barometer or whatever for that. And then the other thing that you said about does the husband trust, and the husband is supposed to cherish and feed the wife. And so then that made me think about, do I cherish and feed myself? And so I thought about that I think I've been in a holding pattern for many years, waiting for a husband in order to start, some journey with what I want to do in my adulthood. And then I realized I'm getting older. There's stuff I want to do, and I really don't need to wait for a husband to be more fulfilled, and really take care of myself and really cherish myself. So I just want to thank you. The Father, spoke to me through that, and I'm looking forward to doing some more fulfilling things in my life, and not having to wait, for the man. So
awesome.
Hallelujah. Thank
Awesome. Fantastic. All right, Shamish Steve.
See if I get this question or point across. You talked about subjecting ourselves wholly, and that would be in order to become one with him and then one another. And so in order to do that, it seems like we're looking for unity, and that definition is the state of being a whole or totally combining all parts into one. Well, now I guess my question is, how can we become as one when we can't seem to agree on each other's views or what is his view of being one is?
Okay, say it one more time, the last part again.
How can we become one when we can't seem to agree with each other or understand what his view of one is?
Well, that's exactly the point that, is going on here, is that he wants us to look at those things as a comparison. You're not going to do well in your relationships if you don't understand your relationship with him, and you're not going to do well in your relationship with him if you don't understand relationships. So he gives us those metaphors in both directions. If you struggle as a wife to be submissive to a husband, then you're going to struggle to submit to him. If you struggle as a man to provide for your wife, then how are you going to be in the kingdom when he gives you all that power, and then you're going to be able to have to provide for all these people and whatever you're going to have to do, what he's expecting from you? And so these are all opportunities to practice and develop the skill sets necessary for the kingdom. All right, Richard.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom.
I'm so grateful of your teachings. Oh, man. I'm so grateful of the teachings. You've been a blessing to me, even when I'm very far away. Ever since I met you, my life has totally changed, and I'm a new man in walking. Though at times I have foes, I like everyone. But I am so grateful. And if it wasn't you, I wouldn't be here. So praise Abba for you, my loving teacher. Abba bless you for that. So,
Thank you, Richard. Thank you.
And actually, my question is, the teaching of today, a husband and wife, if I have those people under me, those I take care of, and they expect more which I cannot offer to them, basically, they are not in the work. I am in the work. They expect much than I can offer to them. So at times it may seem like, like you guide them and you become overloaded with how to lead them, how to show them. You show them that this is not supposed to be like this, but they see it in a different ways. How do I handle that? How do I live in a respectful way to guide them? You never know what Abba will do to their lives. So I should be the living example, right? So.
All right, so that's a really good question. Thank you. All right, so the first thing is that we need to recognize step one is you have to live this the best you can. So that's the example part that you mentioned, okay? You live this the best that you can. And they get to watch that. You also have to accept the limitation on how much influence you actually have over people that don't choose voluntarily to submit. And so husbands and wives end up with a lot of problems because at some point the wife will just say, I'm not going to submit. And so then he can't make her submit, and then we have a problem, right? The Father doesn't make us do anything. It's all because we choose to submit. And nothing can come of it until we choose to submit. Same thing with the husband and the wife. So if your wife and your children are not in the walk and you're in the walk, which is why I encourage people to never do that on purpose, okay? Don't get married to someone not in the walk if you know that before you're getting married and you're in the walk. Because it's always going to be, a problem. Maybe not a huge one all the time, but it's always going to have challenges because you don't see things through the same lens. You're not seeing things through the same filters. And so your understanding and their understanding is going to be a challenge when they don't match up. And so the best thing you can do is allow the space where, first and foremost, you have to be able to do your walk. And this is even easier for you than it is for the wife. If you're a wife and your husband's not in the walk, it's a little bit tougher because you're expected to submit to your husband, but your husband isn't in the walk. And then your husband says, I want you to go with me to the store on Saturday. And you're like, well, I can't do that. So now you have a marriage problem because you're not in agreement. And that needs to be figured out or the marriage isn't going to work. But the thing is, if you're the man, the likelihood then is that even though they may push, you simply say, no, and you're the husband, and you say, no, I'm not doing that. Can you stop them from doing it? Probably not even wise to try to force that. Okay, let them, as long as what they're doing isn't going to cause you to break Torah. If I was married if my wife was not in the walk and I was in the walk, and she wanted to cook bacon, and she wanted to do this, and she wanted to do that, I wouldn't do anything to stop her as long as she wasn't expecting me to participate. Because it's her journey, right? All have to walk out their own salvation and work it out in fear and trembling, right? Philippians 2:12. So I wouldn't be, so much about that. I mean, now I could, as the man of the house, say, look, I don't want this in my house. Then we have a marriage problem. Then she may say, well, good, if you don't want that in your house, then I'm not going to be in your house either. I mean, that could be the case. But if I want to keep her, I would allow her space to walk out her own thing as long as walking it out doesn't create a tripping up problem for me. All right? And let her see that you're becoming a better husband, a better person, a better man. Or if you're the wife, let him see that you're becoming a better woman, a better wife, through this journey. Because if all they see is how it creates challenges and problems for them, they're not going to be excited about it. You may not be excited about you're doing this, right? Does that help a little bit? So, and we could talk more when we talk later, and then we'll get into more details if you want. Okay, live stream, if we have a few that we can squeeze in. I know that this all ran late. The children are already in here, but that's okay. They'll survive. They're behaving very nicely.
Well, I just got a couple, and I think you may have come over. One note is, Rabbi, we just went over 36,000, so.
Hey!
Okay, from Pete and Brenda Lamb says the message in Ephesians 5:22 is repeated in Colossians 3:18 and 1 Peter 3:1, but with different contexts. Can Rabbi comment on the different contexts?
All right, so Colossians what?
3:18.
Well, I have to read the whole context of 3:8, but 3:18 literally just says, wives, subject yourselves to your own husbands as is proper in the master. So that pretty much says exactly the same thing as it said in Ephesians. And the other one was 1 Peter?
1 Peter 3:1.
In the same way, wives, be subject to your own husbands so that if any are disobedient. Okay, 3:1 is dealing with a whole different thing, okay? And I don't want to open up that little can until we can get the full context of what Peter's talking about there. But it is talking about if there are any disobedient to the word, they without a word might be won by the behavior of their wives. Okay, so this idea of what the wives do and how that would affect the men needs a lot of explanation. And I'm not going to have time to do that right now. But the idea is that all of these places, Kepha and Paul are trying to make the point about vertical structure and submission. So wives, why do you need to be submissive to your husband? For one reason, the vertical. Okay, where you are and where he is. Anybody, he could say everybody, wherever you are, whoever's above you, you need to be submissive. It's a structural thing. That's why it says like the assembly to Messiah. In the other places it says slaves be submissive to your masters. Well, guess what? Because that's the vertical. Whatever you're doing, if you are in a position that's below the person that you're dealing with, then you need to treat them a certain way. Then he also tells us, when he talks about husbands, and if you're in the higher position, there's a way you're supposed to treat the one in the lower position. Okay? All right, continue.
Shelley Bell Creation says, Rabbi, I'm a widow and I have pretty much no relationship with my family here because of my walk. How can I practice this and understand it without a way to practice this?
But everybody has a way to practice these things, okay? Your interaction with me gives you an opportunity to practice, okay? Your interaction with a job, if you have a boss, any kind of vertical thing where you are above or below somebody, because there's always, in any relationship, you're in one of those things or you're sideways. You can't really practice this in the sideways, but there's other things about loving each other and loving your brother and that kind of thing that works on the sideways, on the horizontal, okay? But on the vertical, any vertical relationship, you get to practice this. You don't have to practice this with a husband. You don't have to practice this with a family member. Any vertical relationship, you practice whichever role you're in that vertical relationship. If you're in a relationship where you're above that person in the vertical, where you're expected to provide, protect, feed, then you have to understand that you can practice that role. If you're in the below relationship, then you have to practice receiving, trusting, supporting. And so you can do this in any place where that vertical comes into play. All right, next.
Okay, the last one. Olivia Volt, is it wrong for not wanting to get married?
Is it wrong for somebody not to get married?
They not want to get married.
Or not want to get married? No, and I can't blame you. No, I'm kidding. It's not because I feel that way necessarily, but I counsel a lot of people, and I've often said to Elder Billy, I said, who came up with this marriage idea? Apparently it doesn't work very well. I mean, whose brilliant idea was this thing? Okay, so no, it's not wrong to not want to get married, okay? You still have to learn the things that you need to learn so that you can be in the vertical structure correctly. Because the vertical structure is not about boss and servant that way, like dictate. It's about your responsibility to provide and take care of versus your trusting and receiving. And of course, everybody's in the middle, which means that in other relationships, you're on the top providing and feeding and protecting, and the person that you're with, that you're doing that for, has to learn how to trust and submit and, and support that, okay? And so really it's about those roles, and all of us are in the middle, which means that we have opportunities to do either one of those things depending on who we're interacting with. So we always have those opportunities. But as far as not wanting to get married, I can't blame anybody for not wanting to get married. By the way, it may not really matter, because my wife did not want to get married by the time she met me. She was happy being single, ready to just be single, and then Abba said, well, that's not my plan for you, okay? And then plopped me right in her face. And so, it's not necessarily about what you want. So, but it's okay to want it either way. Oh, I talked all about you today, darling. Okay, so. Oh, you were upstairs, you could hear that? Okay. Yeah, she's turning red. Okay, so I did talk all about you today. All right, only good stuff, though. Anyway, it's not making her any less red. Okay, so it's just the clothing reflecting your sweater's red, so that's what it is. Okay. Next question. Somebody get me out of this.
That is all we got, Rabbi.
Oh, good. Nobody's going to get me out of this. I'll get me out of this. I love you, darling. Ayadar. All right, so anyway, the children are like waving at me. I'm trying to talk to my wife, not you. Okay, so there's a private conversation. All right, so that's going to bring us to the end of this. Thank you, everyone, for your questions and everything. It was very good.